If there's one thing that you probably miss more than anything else through this whole pandemic crisis, it's the connection, the person to person connection. I mean, a Zoom call or Skype or whatever really just doesn't do it, right? The remote work experience that many people have given a try has led to a tremendous amount of burnout. Recent polls said that about half of those who have been working remotely, working from home, feel just absolutely stressed and burnt out from the experience because it wasn't set up properly. It wasn't designed in from the beginning. The proper work life balance or work life integration wasn't there. And we just don't get a chance to get out and see things. And it's hard to keep the family together and if you have distance between you and all you have is this and you know here some guy comes on YouTube, another connection through the little screen, and talks about what? The economy. A bunch of numbers, right? Economy is all about the flow of money. Well, no, it's not. See, I've been guilty of it too lately because we do have to keep an eye on the way of keeping score. But economics really is just sociology with that score attached to it. And that's been the problem is that the numbers are easy to report, they're easy to talk about, they're easy to digest, take small individual actions and build them up into something that's simple, digestible, the 30,000 view, nothing but numbers. But it really is all about connection. I mean, that's the basis of family, basis of society, and it's the basis of an economy. The advertisers spend billions and billions of dollars trying to connect, to reach somebody, to get their word out in front of somebody else. It's all about building the connections. What's interesting though is that technology itself is about making connections. Back in 1978, a man named James Burke from the BBC did a 10-part series called Connections, where he outlined the history of technology in a way that, well, he was trying to get around the so called great man theory, which was still prevalent at the time. And the great man theory says that invention and technology and advancement comes from the mind of somebody who applies themselves and forces through something. And Burke said, no, the history of technology is all about individual actions of people just putting together things that were sitting around, waiting for somebody, anybody, to connect them into something new. And he developed what he called the trigger effect, which is that the more each one of these pieces is a trigger for the next innovation based on how it might be combined with different things. I mean, for example, just look at, say, Zoom. We have internet technology, we have video technology, we have uh, all kinds of different things. How do you put them together in a package that is usable by everybody? Yeah, pretty soon you have video conferencing, and then that technology exists. Oh, and then we can take that and apply that to something like remote work. Oh, now we have connections of people all around the world, and those people get together and use Zoom conferencing to work in different places to build new technologies. This is the trigger effect in action. And we see it all the time. I call the general approach to this connections theory. And I've been working on other terms, but basically, the foundations of society, the foundations of an economy, and the foundations of technology are really the same thing. All political theory is basically economic theory at this point, and so it really comes down to people, how they are connected with each other, both the quantity and the quality of of the connections that they have. Now, I recently moved to San Francisco just a year ago, and I came here in part because the opportunities were much better, but also wanted to see how all of this comes together. And I'm just going to give you an example. I haven't worked with Tesla, so I'll just give an example of somebody who didn't employ me. But Tesla is a company that is credited with great innovation. And they certainly demonstrated that the electric car is a possible thing. What did they really do that was innovative? Well, they took the batteries and motors and other bits and pieces, and they assembled them into a whole. They did come up with new motors, those were developed, but even that was a connection between different people who were brought together in one place, used some science that they learned, and they solved the problems, and they built different things. See, most of what the car itself is all about connecting things that were simply sitting around. And then building the car is simply a process of connecting. How does this come together? Well, Steve Jobs once said if you have a problem, what you basically need to do is define the problem and get a group of diverse talent together to solve it. That's what it's really all about, is finding the right talent. That's the limiting thing for any technological development. Okay. Now, recently, Elon Musk has been complaining about how expensive everything is here in San Francisco. The San Francisco San Jose corridor, and it is horribly expensive. You have tremendous number of high value people who earn a tremendous amount of money, drive up the cost of land, have tremendous infrastructure demands, and so on. And it's very easy to see that the cost of rent in San Francisco is actually very similar to the cost of rent in Shanghai, Singapore, London, the great cities of the world, the great capitals of the world. And I often joke that San Francisco, in many ways, is closer to Singapore than it is to Oakland. In economic terms, this is kind of true. And then that's the disconnect, the lack of connection that we see playing out in the streets of America. Because it is true, just like Tesla says, we can have the development group here. We put the factory here that actually employs people and creates jobs and spreads everything out across the country. It's very difficult to locate those in the same place because they have very different needs. Yes, but in the early stages of development, you want them to be close to each other so that the connection between the developers and the people in manufacturing, you have something, designed for manufacturing. It's been a huge problem for Tesla. And this gets back to the fundamental disconnect in America itself. Because San Francisco to Oakland is more than just a bay bridge. The East Bay, which is where all of this technology should be spilling out and providing great opportunity, well, it does, but it's very difficult to maintain because the needs of the two different things are, the two different systems are, unfortunately, very different. So how do you deal with that? How do you make that connection? I mean, should Tesla just be building a factory somewhere else? Like Detroit would be fun. The answer is probably. It needs to move out to the rest of the country. It needs to go out somewhere else. But it is all about connections. And the reason why these things don't spill out quickly is the need for having people in one place or a close ability to communicate. How do you do that if the developers are in San Jose and the factory is in Detroit, for example? Oh, yeah, that's right, that video technology, that might help. Is it enough? How do you feel it's been working from home, being disconnected? It's not quite enough, is it? See, everything is about connections. And the way technology develops is the connection between people to people sharing ideas so that ultimately ideas are connected to solve a problem and create something new. That is how technology itself is developed, how new ideas come to be, and then eventually how they are connected up to the people that can make it happen, and the technology is reduced to practice. Understanding the process of connections, the quantity and the quality of them, is essential to understanding the economy as we know it now, as it advances in high technology, but also the sociology, the politics, how we connect with each other, how nobody gets left behind, how the manufacturing jobs don't just evaporate from Michigan and Ohio and other places that have been struggling for an extremely long period of time and nothing ever seems to change. Connection and the study of connection is critical to understanding how our world is glued together. As we specialize, as we get these different skills, learning how to wind a motor differently so that it's a little more efficient under certain circumstances, and plugging that into something that becomes a car and goes out to the roads all across America and the world. Understanding connection is critical. It's the way technology advances, it's the way the economy is put together, it's the way everything in society is put together. There are certain key points of failure that have been highlighted during this whole pandemic, which honestly, we have a pandemic because of connection itself. This is the root issue that we are dealing with. Connection is what created the situation that forces us to isolate, and then we reach out using technologies that were connected together, and we get frustrated because the connection is between different racial groups is hopelessly messed up, and people simply do not understand each other. And that gap across the Bay Bridge is pretty huge sometimes. What do we do to enhance connection? How do we look at the process of connecting? Because it turns out that sociology and economics and politics and technology itself are kind of the same thing. They're all adventures of the human mind and throat and heart and guts. How those are all connected themselves into one uniform course of action where we move together is what really matters. That's what I really want to be talking about. Because after all, it is the people, their skills, their drive, their ambition, that is the most valuable resource of any society. You waste that, you waste the most important resource you have. Thank you.